lecture, we are going to study about all the agronomic crops and the concepts related to them. So one by one, we are going to go through whatever the topics are given in the syllabus. We will go through them. So in this whole of the lecture, we are going to study about the classification of crops, then factors affecting the crop production, the cropping system, cropping pattern, types of cropping system, precision farming, and then finally about the organic farming. Alright, so first starting with the classification of crops. So we know that in agronomy, we generally study about the field crops. Field crops include our oil seed crops or cash crops or cereal crops, pulses. All these are studied under the agronomy. So one by one we are going to see that how these crops are basically classified, on what basis they are classified. Okay, so first classification we have on the basis of season. So how do we first study, how do we go about studying about the crops? First, we see that in which season do we have to sow a particular crop, in which season do we have to cultivate the crop. So on that basis, first we classify the crops on the basis of the season. Okay. So in India, according to Indian climatic conditions, we generally have three types of season. First is our Kharif season, second is our Rabi season, and the third one is the Zaid season. The Kharif season, the cropping year basically starts from the Kharif season only. Okay, so first we study about the Kharif season. It basically starts from the month of rainy season, or you can say in the month of June or July. When you must have seen that southwest monsoon, when it arrives in India, from that time, when in agriculture we basically require the water. Water is one of the major inputs for cultivation of any of the crop. So in order to sow any crop, we first need to irrigate the land, and for irrigation we generally depend either on the rainfall or we irrigate the land by any of the resources, right? So here when we go for rain-fed cropping, or you can say rain-fed cultivation of crops, we generally depend on the monsoon. So our cropping season, or you can say the cropping year, begins with the rainfall. So here that's why we first consider the Kharif crops, Kharif season. Okay, and Kharif it's generally an Arabic word which means the autumn. Okay, so it begins with the rainy season, southwest monsoon that we have. Okay, the harvesting time, generally the crops that are sown in the month of June or July, they are harvested in the month of October or November. However, this duration can vary from crop to crop and variety to variety. Alright, then it is also known as the monsoon crops, because generally in the season of monsoon these are grown. That's why these are called as the monsoon crops. And here we have the example of the paddy, or you can say rice. Okay, so paddy is basically the dhan that we generally is one of the staple crops, staple crops of our food, you can say. And generally the people of India consume rice and the wheat. Okay, so rice or paddy is grown in the Kharif season. Second, we have the maize, soybean, sorghum, groundnut, cotton. These are some of the crops. Next season that we have is the Rabi season. Rabi means the spring in Arabic. Alright, now this begins after the ending of the Kharif season. So Kharif season crops are harvested in the month of October, November, and after harvesting of those crops, we go for next season crops, that is the Rabi season crops. Okay. So Rabi season begins from October, November, and generally the whole crop duration of these crops ends in the month of March and April. Alright. Then these are also known as the winter crops, because generally winter prevails in these you can say in these months. Alright, in the northern part. However, in the southern part, we rarely see the changes in summer and winter season. So it's generally for the northern part where the winter season prevails at this time. That's why these are called as the winter crops. Examples we have the wheat, chickpea, pea, sunflower, safflower, mustard. Okay. Then the third one we have is the Zaid season. It's generally not talked about much, because main seasons are Kharif and Rabi season. Third, we have the Zaid season. It's a smaller one, and the crops grown in this season are also lesser. That's why it's not given due importance. Third, we have the Zaid. Zaid is also an Arabic word. Whole of these, you can say the Kharif, Rabi, all the three words are derived from the Arabic language. Alright. This means summer. It is generally sown in the month of March and harvested in the month of May. Alright. Here we have the examples of paddy. Paddy generally that is grown in the summer. So it is also known as a summer rice. Alright. Groundnut we have mung, sunflower, maize, groundnut. Apart from this, some of the cucurbits, vegetable crops are also grown in the Zaid season. Okay, next we have on the basis of pottery. So, on the basis of pottery, we have different kinds of crops. We have the cereal crops. Cereal crops also known as the anaj, we call it in Hindi. Hai na? So, what is the major quality of cereal crops? You can say that they are rich in carbohydrates. Alright, and they generally belong to Gramini family or Poaceae family. That's why these are the cereal crops. Next we have the pulses. Pulses are rich in proteins and these generally belong to the Leguminosae family. So all Leguminosae family are covered under the pulse crops. Okay. Then we have the oil seeds. Oil seeds, the seeds of these crops are rich in oil and generally they are used for the oil extraction. They do not have in particular any one family. These can be distributed over the different families as well. Okay, so these are the oil seed crops. For example, we have the groundnut, we have sesame, even cotton seeds also are also used for extracting the oil. We have sunflower, safflower, so all those come under the oil seed crops. Next we have the fiber crops, and fiber crops generally those crops that are cultivated for obtaining the fiber. So here we have the example of cotton, jute, mesta. Alright. Then we have the forage crops. Forage crops are the ones, or forage, or you can also call it as fodder crops. These are the ones that are cultivated for generally feeding our livestock. So these act as a feed for the livestock. Alright. Here you can have the sorghum or lucerne or napier grasses. Okay. Next we have the sugar crops. So sugar crops are the ones which are used for extracting the sugar. Here mainly we have the sugar cane, and apart from sugar cane we also have sugar beet. So sugar beet is also grown for obtaining the sugar. Next we have on the basis of number of cotyledons. So what are basically cotyledons? See, generally any of the crop is grown with the help of the seed. Okay. So in this seed, these we have different structures or different organs. One of the structure that we have is the cotyledon. Okay, so on that basis, cotyledon, how many cotyledons are there? On that basis, we can divide it into monocots and the dicots. Monocots have the single cotyledon. Here you can see a single cotyledon is present there, and here we have the double cotyledons. So these are considered under the dicots. Generally, the dals you must have seen which can be split into two. Those come under the dicots. Alright. So monocots having one cotyledon, and all the cereals and millets. All the cereals, that means, for example, we have rice, we have wheat. All those come under the monocots. Whereas in dicots, we generally have the pulses. So you must have seen chickpea. We can split it into two. So those two splitted parts are basically the cotyledons. Alright. So all the legumes and pulses come under this dicots. Next we have on the basis of taxonomy. So on the basis of taxonomy, that means the classification, the biological classification that we have, on that basis we have the different categories. So here we have the different categories on the basis of the families they belong to, the families that these plants belong to. So first we have the Poaceae or the Gramini. So all the cereal crops you can say belong to the Poaceae or Gramini family. Here we have cereals, millets and the grasses. Alright, next we have the Leguminosae family. So in Leguminosae family, we generally have the pulses and some of the legume fodders as well. For example, we have berseem or green manure crops as well. Okay. Similarly, we have the crucifery. In crucifery, we have the mustard, that is an oilseed crop, the radish, cabbage, cauliflower. All these are the vegetable crops. Then we have the cucurbitaceae. Similar way, we have the different, you can say, different families to which different crops belong. Alright. Next we have the classification based on the cultural method. Cultural method means how it is basically cultivated. So it can be of two types, the rain-fed crops or the irrigated crops. Now in India, generally the cultivation is done either it can be rain-fed. Rain-fed means rain-fed. Okay, you can split this word into two. Rain, you must be knowing बारिश जो होती है, ठीक है. Fed means it has been fed. So water requirement of these crops is like met by with the rains. Alright. That's why these are called the rain-fed crops. So crops which depend on the rainfall or monsoon to fulfill their water requirement. Second, we have the irrigated crops. Here we give the artificial, you can say artificially the water requirement is supplemented with the help of the irrigation. So this irrigation source can be a tube well, it can be a canal, or it can be a river or anything else. Okay? So those are classified under the irrigated crops. Now we have the next classification, that is based on the root system. So on the basis of root system, we have two types. One is taproot system, the other one is the fibrous root system. So in taproot system, we generally have one main taproot. Okay, it is basically this tapering root is there, one main root, and then we have the like sub branches of that. Alright, so here you can see that there is one main root and then the sub branches. Whereas in fibrous root system, we do not have one main taproot. Generally, the plant you can see it has several auxiliary roots. Okay, so there won't be any one main root. Those are classified under the fibrous root system. Now, all the plants or all the, you can say, the cereals, those belong to the Poaceae family or Gramineae family, fall under this category of fibrous roots because all of them have the fibrous roots. Whereas other crops, you can say the pulses or the cotton crop, you can say the fiber crop, you can say, those come under the taproot system because they have the main taproots. Alright, next we have the classification on the basis of the method of sowing or planting. So how do we sow? First we had seen the classification on the basis of when it is sown and how is it sown. Now we are going to study. So first we have the direct seeded crop, then we have the vegetatively propagated crops and the transplanted crops. So transplanted crops and direct seeded crops are the ones where we use the seed for sowing purpose. Okay. Whereas in vegetatively propagated crops, we generally go for sowing of crops with the help of, you can say, we use different vegetative propagules or different vegetative parts of the plant in order to sow, or you can say in order to grow a new plant. Alright, so in direct seeded crops, what we do is, whatever seed is taken for like propagation purpose, that is directly sown into the main field. Means the main field will be irrigated and after that the seed will be sown directly into the field. Whereas in transplanted crops, what you do is, we do not go for like directly sowing into the main field. We first prepare a nursery where these seedlings are grown for several times unless they are like hardy enough in order to survive into the main field, or we generally go for cultivation of these crops in the nursery so as to have better you can say the plant growth. Okay, so in that case we first grow them in the nursery and after that these seedlings are transplanted into the main field. So those are called the transplanted crops. Generally it is seen in the case of rice, or you can say the paddy, and some other vegetable crops like tomato, tobacco, onion, brinjal. Alright. In vegetatively propagated crops, we do not go for cultivation purpose with the help of seed. We do not use the seed. Instead, we use any of the plant part. Okay, this plant part can be, it can be the stem cutting, it can be the or you can say leaf cutting, or it can be the root cutting. Okay, so different methods, layering, grafting, those are used for in order to form a new plant. So those come under the vegetatively propagated crops. Generally we see this in the case of sugarcane. You must have seen that sets are generally used. So the stem of the sugarcane is generally used for the sowing purpose. In case of potato, you must have seen the tuber is used. So this is how it is done. Okay. Now we have the other types of crops. So till now we have seen the classification of crops. Here we are going to study about some other types of crops. So what are the different types of crops that we generally see? First is our LA crops. So what is LA crops? It's basically also known as the hedgerow intercrops. What is it? So you can say it's like a concept similar to agroforest. Okay, so here what do we do? You can see in the picture also that generally the perennial crops, or you can say the perennial plants like trees, are grown on the sides of the you can say the field. Okay, and in the main like area where we have the like inter-row spaces, if we generally go for cultivation of the trees in our farmland, so we'll grow them far apart. In between we'll have ample of space. In that space we can cultivate any of the annual crops. So that is basically the LA crops. Okay, it's also known as the hedgerow intercrops. Preferably the leguminous trees or shrubs are grown simultaneously with the arable crops. Here arable crops means only like crops that are grown on the fertile land. So those are the arable crops, or the crops that are cultivated basically. Okay, example we have the turmeric we can grow, or ginger we can grow, or any other crop can also be grown in the passage formed by the rows of the eucalyptus. Now these trees can be anyone, any of the species we can take. Here we have taken for example, we have the eucalyptus, superwood or cassia, etc. Okay. Next concept we have is the augment crops. So what are augment crops? These are such crops that are grown to supplement the yield of the main crops. So in a field, if we generally go for cultivation of a single crop, so in this case it says that if we grow a single crop, the yield will not be that much as much it will be when it is grown with the augment crop. So these augment crops, when these are grown along with our main crop, will help the main crop to increase the yield or increase the productivity. So such crops are generally grown for to supplement. Example we have the Japanese mustard with the birdseed. Okay. Next we have the avenue crop. So in avenue crops, it's basically any of the path. If you can see here also, you can see there is a road. Okay, a road or any path that is going to our farm area, and that path or you can say road, the sides of those roads we can grow any of the trees. Okay, so such crops are grown along the farm roads or fences. Example we can say that pigeon pea or any trees also can be grown. So those all will come under the avenue crops. Alright. Next we have the concept of catch crop or contingent crop. So what are these catch crops or contingent crops? So generally you have seen in India also that many a times what happens due to heavy rainfall or due to drought conditions, the farmers face a lot of crop losses. Okay, these can be like the crop may get lodged. Okay, they can be lodging in the crop, or these crops may dry up. Any of the things can happen. So what happens when generally a farmer, you can say, he has grown some crop, and after some times what happens, for example, if we have a duration of 3 months of any of the crop, है ना? So during that time what happened, for 2 months the crop grew on the land, and after like 2 months what happened, there was a drought or there was a flood. Okay, so due to that there was a lot of crop loss. Now the farmer has only 1 month, or you can say 1 to 1.5 months for him to grow any of the other crops. So at that time, which crop he'll grow? So that crop will be called as the contingent crop, or the you can say catch crop. Now generally these crops have the lesser duration. Okay, so they can grow up fast and can give and can save the farmer from total crop loss or total economic loss, you can say. Okay, so crop cultivated to catch the forthcoming season when the main crop has failed. Example we have the linseed, toria, urdu, moong, cowpea. All these crops have lesser of crop duration. Okay. Next we have the smaller crops. What are smaller crops? These are specialized cover crops being able to suppress the weeds by providing dense foliage and quick growing ability. Example, we have the buckwheat, mustard and cowpea. So what happens in smaller crops? These are the crops which grow up very fastly. So generally what happens, if you see here, that crop is grown in those rows. In between the rows, you can see here we have the weeds growing up. So in order to save our crops from weed, we can grow such crops. Those will like quickly grow up. Quickly they'll cover the ground area, and after that, what will happen? Once the ground area has been covered, the weeds will not have enough of area in order to grow. So those are called as the smaller crops. Examples, we have the mustard or the cowpea or the urdu. Okay. Next we have the cover crops. Okay. Here we have seen the smaller crops. Here the other one we have the cover crops. In cover crops, you can say a similar type of you can say the concept is used that these crops they grow quickly and they cover the area or ground area, you can say. So okay. So these are basically the close growing crops grown primarily to improve and protect the soil erosion. So here our motive is to save the land area from erosion. Okay. So basically these crop will grow and they'll cover all of the area, so that whenever there is too much of rainfall or high wind speed coming up, those crops will basically save the ground area and will not allow the erosion to happen. Alright. So those are the cover crops. Example, we have the lobia, groundnut, urd, sweet potato or methi. Next we have the lay crops. What are lay crops? These are generally like there are farmers who have the livestock as well. So what do is they use their land area to grow the fodder crops also, fodder grass crop, and they also use the area for growing any other agricultural crops. So what happens if you use a land area first for the cultivation of any, you can say grass, or you can go for any legume also, fodder legume, and those are grown in cultivation in rotation with any of the agricultural crops. Agricultural crops can be any of the cereal crops, it can be, or any other crop as well. Okay, fiber crop or sugar cane crop. Okay. Example, the birdseed and mustard. So those are called as the lay crops. Here in some you can say sites or in some books you can also see that lay crops are also like used for the conservation of soil. So that can also be the purpose. Next we have, till now we have seen the different types of crops. Now we are going to see the factors that affect the crop production. So what are the different factors? Generally we have divided it into two main categories. First we have the internal factors and the other one we have the external factors. So in internal factors we have the genetic factors. So genetic factors, those are like mapped into the genes. Okay, so for example, any color or any height of the plant is its genetic property. So those are the genetic factors. Another one we have the external factors or the environmental factors. So in environmental factors we have different ones: climate, wind effect, biotech, physiographic, socio-economic. One by one we are going to study about that. First are the internal factors or the genetic factors. Here we can have any of the variety can have the high yielding ability, or it can be early maturing, or it can have certain color, or it can have certain you can say height, okay, certain number of leaves, certain number of tillers. All those are governed by the genetic makeup of the plant. Okay, resistance to lodging, resistance to any disease, resistance to any insect pest attack. Those are our genetic factors. Drought, flood, salinity tolerance. Others we have the chemical composition of the grain, quality of grains, quality of straw. So how does this affect the distribution of any crop? See, if a place has like certain kind of people who generally prefer the crops that are like good in certain quality, or you can say good in certain flavor. So in those areas, only those kinds of crops will be grown, or certain kind of variety will be grown. So that is how the distribution, or you can say production of any of the crop is like governed. Okay. Next we have the external factors. So in external factors we have different factors. For example, we have the climatic factors. So in climate we see the precipitation. So if in any area there is more of precipitation, we'll go for cultivation of paddy, or we'll go for cultivation of sugarcane, because these crops require higher amount of water. Whereas in drier areas where the temperature is high, or you can say there is not much available water present there, so there we will go for cultivation of millets, which require lesser amount of water. Okay. Next we have the temperature. So in temperature also we see that certain crops are grown in the temperate region, certain crops are grown in the tropical region, certain crops are grown in the subtropical region also. Then we have the atmospheric humidity also. So atmospheric humidity also is an essential factor for the cultivation of crops. Next we have the solar radiation, wind velocity and atmospheric gases. So these factors they somewhere or the other they affect the growth of the plants, or you can say the suitability of plants to certain areas. So these are some of the factors, climatic factors. Next we have the edaphic factors. Edaphic means that is related to soil related all the factors. Soil moisture, soil air, soil temperature, soil mineral matter, then soil organic matter, soil organisms, soil reactions, whether the soil has is it saline or is it acidic, or does it contains more amount of organic matter or less amount of organic matter, or is the place marginalized. Marginalized means when the soil is not very fertile. So in those cases we can grow for cultivation of certain pulses, because pulses can fix the atmospheric nitrogen, so they can be grown in less fertile areas as well. Okay. Then there are certain crops that are like more tolerant to saline conditions, so those can be grown in that kind of areas where the soil is more saline. Soil air, soil moisture, soil temperature, all these factors affect the crop growth somewhere or the else. Okay. Next we have the biotic factors. So in biotic factors, biotic means the living factors. Okay. In living factors we have the plants and animals. So in soil only we have the different kinds of soil microorganisms. Those are considered the animals. And we have the plants, different types of plants. You can say the weeds. So weeds are generally the plants that grow out of place, out of time. Okay. So what happens is जनरली वीड्स आर द खरपतवार जिसको हम कहते हैं हिंदी में, या झाड़ियाँ जिसको कहते हैं हिंदी में. ठीक है. सो व्हाट हैपेंस, दीज वीड्स विल लाइक कम्पीट विद द मेन क्रॉप. तो फिर क्या, नो द एरियाज वेयर there is like much of infestation of weed, there is higher infestation of weed, we generally don't go for cultivation of crops there, है ना. So in that way these plants and animals they affect the cultivation of crops. Next we have the physiographic factors. Physiographic factors generally means the topography or the slope of an area. So some crops can be grown even in the slopey areas, but some other crops cannot be grown. For example, some of the crops that we have, the cereal crops, you can say, those have the shallow root system. So those cannot be like grown in the slopey areas. They'll fall off from there. There will be more of lodging because their root system is not hard enough. Whereas the crops like you can say the pulses can be grown even in the slopey areas because their root system is much harder. So they'll be able to hold to the soil. So different physiographic factors also affect the cultivation of crops. Also we can say that in some places the elevation is higher. So in higher altitude areas we generally go for cultivation of temperate crops. So in that way this can be different. Then we have the socio-economic factors. Socio-economic factors means the economic condition of the farmer. So if the farmer is like poor, he'll generally go for cultivation of the crops that require lesser of cost of cultivation. Okay? For example, we have the millets. So in millets we require lesser of water, so that can be grown in the marginalized land also, and similarly pulses can be grown. So socio-economic factors also play an important role for the cultivation of any crop. Now coming to cropping system and cropping pattern. So what is first? First we'll study about the cropping system and then we'll study about the cropping pattern. Okay. So cropping system. What is cropping system? The cropping pattern used on a farmland and their interaction with the farm resources, other farm enterprises and available technology which determines their makeup. So generally the cropping pattern, that means what kind of crops are grown in one land area and those crops, the interaction of those crops with the other factors, the environmental factors we have, the other enterprises that we have. Enterprises means we can have the livestock or we can have the fisheries. So those fisheries or livestock, how do we integrate that with our cropping system, or how do our cropping system interacts with all these enterprises or the environmental factors, those all that system. So basically we see the different kinds of system. Now we have the, in our body also we see the digestive system, the respiratory system. How does a system work? When different components of the system work together in order to complete a process. Then when this process, what does it involve? The substrates are converted into a product. So in similar way, in cropping system also, when these crops are totally grown or cultivated on a land area, it has to interact with the different factors. So how do they complete all these processes, and finally we harvest the crop? So that whole of the system is basically the cropping system. Now coming to the first cropping pattern. So under this cropping system, we have the cropping pattern term as well. What does this cropping pattern means? So cropping pattern is basically the yearly sequence and spatial arrangement of crops or of crops and fallow on a given area. So what happens? Suppose you have a land area. Okay, suppose it is of 10 hectare. So now what will you do is, you'll first divide this land area, or you can go for the cultivation of a single crop also, but if I decide to divide my land area of 10 hectare land area into different areas, suppose it is of 2.5 hectare area, 2.5 hectare area. So this is basically the spatial arrangement. Okay, I have designated this area to another crop, cultivation of another crop, this 2.5 hectare area in cultivation of another crop. So in generally what happens is, cropping pattern is this dividation of this cropping of this whole of the area, cultivated area, into different zones where we can cultivate different crops. First is this. Okay, this involves cropping pattern. Another one is yearly sequence. Yearly sequence means in an year we have seen that we have different seasons. We have the Kharif season, Rabi season, Zaid season. So if in different seasons I go for cultivation of different crops. Okay, in Kharif season I'll go for cultivation of rice. In Rabi season I'll go for cultivation of wheat. So what happens? This yearly sequence also. So here we'll combine both of them. In 2.5 hectare area, I go for crop rotation of rice, wheat. Okay. In another 2.5 hectare area, I generally go for cultivation of any other crops. For example, we have sorghum. Okay. And uske साथ I go for cultivation of chickpea, or I go for cultivation of maize. ठीक है, in खरीफ season, and next season में मैंने ले लिया कोई भी other crop. So for example mustard. So whole of this plan, okay, where I am dividing my land area into different areas, sub areas, and where I am deciding that in which season I'll be growing which crop, that is basically the cropping pattern. Okay, or you can say the sequence of the crops or of crops and fallow. Fallow means in one season I have grown, for example, I have grown sugar cane in this. Okay. So generally it is sugarcane is grown for 1 year. So for 1 year I have grown sugarcane. For remaining part of year, I'll leave the area fallow. ठीक है. For example, the sugarcane was only of 10 months. 10 months के duration की थी अगर. ठीक है. And बाकी के 2 months I left the area fallow. So sorry for that. Okay, so if I cultivate sugarcane and after that I'll leave the land area fallow, so that also comes under the cropping pattern. ठीक है. Next is like we have seen the cropping system and cropping pattern. Now this cropping system is basically divided into different types. We have the monocropping and the multiple cropping. Now multiple cropping is further divided into mixed cropping, intercropping, sequential cropping and the relay cropping as well. ठीक है. One by one we are going to see what are these. First is our monocropping. So monocropping is basically, here you can see that single crop is grown in whole of the land area. No intercropping is there. है ना? So when single crop is grown on whole of the land area and for all of the seasons. So in one land area, if I go for cultivation of only rice, for example, we have now the South Indian areas of Tamil Nadu, you can say. Generally Thanjavur district of Tamil Nadu, you must have seen there that in whole of the year they generally go for the cultivation of rice. So when I go for cultivation of rice in Kharif season also, Rabi season also, and again in Kharif season I will go for cultivation of rice, so that would be called as the monocropping. Okay, so monocropping is agricultural practice of growing single crop year after year on the same piece of land. Okay. Next we have the multiple cropping. So opposite of monocropping. So in multiple cropping we will go for cultivation of, here you can say that different kinds of crops are being grown. है ना? Here you can see the different kinds of crops are being grown on a single land area. So that is basically called as the multiple cropping. ठीक है? Practice of producing 2 or more crops on the same same plot of land rather than simply one, either in one cropping season. So this can be in single season also, or it can be in whole of the year time also. Sequentially also we can change the crop. So that would be called as the multiple cropping. Now in multiple cropping also we have the different types. Okay. First we have the intercropping, we have the mixed cropping, mixed sequential cropping and the relay cropping. One by one we are going to see this. First is the intercropping. So what is basically intercropping? There we have seen that in the opposite of like the monocropping, we have the multiple cropping. In multiple cropping we have the intercropping. Intercropping is the cultivation of 2 or more crops and the same time on the same field. Okay. So what happens in intercropping? We generally go for cultivation of crops, more than one crop on single land area but in parallel rows. Okay, so we'll have rows of crops. Here you can see we have row of one crop. Okay, then we have the row of another crop. Then we have the row of first one crop. So that is basically the intercropping. Next we have, in intercropping also we have the different types. Okay. So intercropping, basically first is our companion cropping. So in companion cropping what happens? 2 crops, those are grown in the land area. One will be the main crop and the other one will be the companion crop. So this companion crop helps the main crop. Either it will like protect the main crop from any of the pests or diseases, or it will somewhere help the main crop in growing the yield. Okay, so that is basically the cropping, companion cropping. Here you can see that these parsley or basil crop that is basically grown with or tomato. So it saves the tomato from different types of insects. Okay, it improves the tomato plant growth and flavor and repels the bugs as well as different types of insects as well. So that is called the companion cropping. Okay. Next we have the parallel cropping. So in parallel cropping what happens? 2 crops that are grown parallelly, okay, in parallel rows, they have no effect on each other. Okay. So they are not going to affect each other in any ways. That is called the parallel cropping. Next we have the multi-storied cropping. In multi-storied cropping we generally go for cultivation of crops of different heights. Okay. As you can see here, the main plant has the different height, then we have another plant that has different height, then we have another plant that has different height. Here we can take the example of, for example, we grow papaya. So papaya is काफ़ी taller plant, ठीक है. Along with that, if we go for cultivation of any cucurbits, those are the vines. ठीक है, कोई भी cucurbits आप ले सकते हो इसमें. For example, bottle gourd ही अगर if we go for cultivation of bottle gourd, with this we can go for cultivation of ginger. So ginger is all the more smaller plant. So it will acquire lesser, you can say, lesser of height also. In this way, what happens? They will not interfere or compete with each other in any way. So that is the multi-storied cropping. The height of the different plants is different. Next, we have the synergistic cropping. So in synergistic cropping, what happens is generally the main plant, that yield of the main plant is like affected with the cultivation of another plant that we grow. So generally here we can see that crops like pulses are generally grown with. If we grow pulses with any other crop, the pulses will help the other crop as well. It will help the, as we know that pulses generally like fix the atmospheric nitrogen. So the yield of pulses will be enriched, as well as the main crop yield also will be enriched. So that can be the synergistic crop. Next we have the mixed cropping. So first we had seen the intercropping. In intercropping, what happened is there were rows of different crops growing together. In mixed cropping, also we go for cultivation of multiple crops, but they are not in like rows. They are not arranged in rows. So in mixed cropping, we generally like mix the seeds of different types of crops and then we broadcast them. So what happens? There won't be any single row. You cannot distinguishly see that single row of one crop is there. Here, as for example, here you can see that in between we have the another crop and this is another crop. So they are mixed together. So growing of two or more crops simultaneously on the same piece of land without any definite row arrangement. This is the difference between mixed cropping and the intercropping. Next we have the sequential cropping. So when we go for multiple cropping, or you can say the cultivation of different crops in temporal aspect, that means in one season we'll go for cultivation of one crop, in another season we'll go for cultivation of another crop. So that is called the sequential cropping. Here you can see growing of two or more crops in a sequence on the same field in a farming year. This is called as the sequential cropping. Example, we have the rice field. So in one season we will go for cultivation of rice, and another season we will go for cultivation of wheat. In similar way, we have the maize mustard also. So in Kharif season we will go for cultivation of maize, in Rabi season we will go for cultivation of mustard. So that is the sequential cropping. Next we have the relay cropping. In relay cropping, what happens? See, in sequential cropping, what happened? After the cultivation of one crop has been finished, after it has been harvested, then we will go for cultivation of another crop. In relay cropping, the crop duration of two crops is overlapped. How is it overlapped? The first crop is still in the field and it has not been harvested. It is like near maturity, or it has reached maturity, but it has not been harvested. During that time only, when the standing crop is there, we'll go for sowing of another crop. So here you can see when one crop is ready for harvesting, it is ready for harvesting, but before the harvesting of this crop, we have grown the another crop also. So that is basically the relay cropping. Okay. Next we have, so this was about the cropping system and cropping pattern. Now we have the organic farming. Okay. So what happens in organic farming? Organic farming is basically a type of farming where we do not use any of the synthetic, you can say synthetic chemicals, not in the form of fertilizer, not in the form of pesticides. Okay, all the natural things that we obtain from the nature, or you can say on-farm inputs, those are generally used in the organic farming. So organic farming, you can see that we have different standards for these organic farming. Do not use GMOs. Okay, genetically modified organisms or genetically modified crops are not used here. If we go for cultivation of genetically modified crops, for example, we have BT cotton, so we won't call it as organic farm. Okay, no synthetic fertilizers are used. Organic fertilizers are only used. Organic fertilizers means like vermicompost we have, or the manure that we have. Okay, then we have reducing the use of non-renewable resources, use of local resources, lower water consumption, improved soil and water holding capacity. So this has different advantages, है ना? As we go for lesser consumption of chemicals, we are indirectly helping the nature. That's why it will help to like improve the quality of the soil that we have or the water that is conserved. Then increase soil organic matter is there, larger floral faunal microbial biodiversity we have, lower energy is used, crop rotation is used here, then no agrochemicals are used. Okay, so according to FAO, that is Food and Agriculture Organization, had suggested a definition for this, which says that organic agriculture is a unique production management system which promotes and enhances the agro-ecosystem health, including the biodiversity. So it improves the biodiversity because it is not using any of the chemicals, so those chemicals will not be toxic to any of the organism that is present in the plant, present in the soil, any of the microorganisms. So in that way it is basically helping to improve the biodiversity. Okay, biological cycles are improved, soil biological activity is improved, where there will be more number of microorganisms because will depend more on microorganisms for the rotation, or you can say the cycle of different nutrients that we have, है ना? So biological activity will be improved. This is accomplished by using on-farm agronomic, biological and mechanical methods in exclusion of all synthetic of farm inputs. Okay. So this is basically a definition that was given by FAO. Now we have the four principles of organic farming. What are the different principles of organic farming that we have? Health, ecology, fairness and care. So it says, organic farming says that we have to like maintain the health of the plants, of the animals, of the human beings that are there, and of the earth as a whole. So that's why it is health. The health is one of the important principle of organic farming. That ecology, how to maintain the ecological balance so as to have more biodiversity and less extinction of different species. Fairness, all the animals or all the organisms that are present in the environment or on earth have to be treated equally and fairly. Then we have the care. So we have to take care of all the organisms and we have to take care of the mother earth. So basically that is the principle of organic farming. Now what are the advantages of organic farming? So if we have the different advantages, first is that maintain the environmental health, okay, reduce the human and animal health hazards, sustainable production. So not only like saving the environment for ourselves but also saving the environment for the future generation as well. So that is the sustainable production. Then we have it reduces the cost of agricultural production. So we'll use lesser of chemicals. So the cost of cultivation will be reduced. Ensures the optimum utilization. So whatever natural resources that we have, okay, water that we have, the different resources, you can say the livestock that we have, whatever the dung is obtained from that can be used for the manure purpose. So ensures optimum utilization of natural resources. It improves the soil physical properties as well. So these are the different advantages that we get when we go for organic cultivation. Now coming to the components of organic farming. So components of organic farming. See, in agriculture we have the different components. We have to like maintain the biodiversity. We have to like see the weed population. We have to check the weed population. We have to check the diseases and insect infestation. So in similar way, in organic farming also we have to see all these things. So components of organic farming, first is our nutrient management. How do we go for managing the nutrient demand that a plant has? So here, instead of using the fertilizers, inorganic fertilizers, we go for like using all the natural resources. Here we use the Panchagavya or Dasgavya. How is it made? With the help of like cow dung is used, okay, curd is used, milk is used, cow urine is used, ghee is used, jaggery is used. All these things are like mixed up with the cow slurry, okay, and then a formulation is made which is used to supplement the different nutrient demand of the plant, okay. So that is how nutrient management is done. Then we have the pest and disease management. So here we do not have any cure. Instead we go for preventive measures. So we prevent our plant from different diseases and insect infestation. How do we do that? By like first is our seed treatment. So we generally treat the seed with a cow dung or cow urine. So as to like save it from different diseases or fungal spores, you can say, or the bacterial spores, okay. Then we save our like crop with different diseases in such a way that we can like alter the sowing time, or we can alter the harvesting time, we can alter the type of variety that we are using. In that way we generally go for preventive measures instead of curable measures, okay. Then we have the weed management. So generally here also we go for preventive measures because we cannot use any of the pesticides or any of the herbicides. So generally we use the we go for weeding purposes. How do we go for that? By hand weeding we can do, है ना, or hand hoeing can be done. Those methods are generally used. Then we have the organic certification and marketing. So in order to get our like whatever produce that we have produced, or you can say organic produce that we have cultivated, has to be certified or has to be given that label of organic. How do we go for that? Generally it is done by two organizations. First is our NPOP, okay, and another one we have the PGS certification. So first the farmers need to form a group, or you can say cluster, because it is generally, the certification is generally given in the cluster. So formation of a group has to be there, okay. Then they have to go for registration. So they'll have to register themselves on the site, okay, either the PGS India portal or the NPOP. Then there will be meetings. First they'll be trained about how to go for organic farming. So all that training will be given. So trainings are organized, then peer appraisal, then basically these people from different you can say certification agencies, they go for supervision or inspection in between. So all those are done. Then whole of the report is submitted there. Then finally they get the certificate, and then you have to like apply for the license, whether they can use the label of organic or not. And then after that they'll finally get that label, and then marketing of these products will be done under the organic label. So okay, so this is how organic certification and marketing is done, okay. So now studying about the precision farming. So what is precision farming? See, the word comes from precise, means when we go for farming in a precise way, that means whatever inputs we are using for cultivation of any crop, we are using those inputs very precisely only at the places where it is needed. Now how is it done? It is done with the help of using different types of technology. So with different types of technology, we try to find out the variability in our field. That means the different types of spatial variability, you can say. Suppose we have a field area, okay, and in that field area, in one of the patch, or you can say in one of the corner, there are these plants that are growing on. Those have a yellowing patch. Okay. Now, why this yellowing patch is being like developed? There can be possibility that no, that portion is dry, or the water is not able to like reach at that portion, or there is deficiency of nitrogen. So what happens in precision farming? First we'll identify that which place has got this type of symptoms, or this type of plants, or this type of with using different types of technology. It can be the sensors can be used, or you can use the GPS system, or you can use the drones to capture the photos. Okay, then we'll use all of our inputs, or you can say all of our resources in that portion only. Suppose if there is nitrogen deficiency in one patch, we'll just use the nitrogen fertilizer in that patch only. Okay, so by using these these inputs only in that area, that means we are precisely using our inputs. Also, the productivity that we'll get will be more when there will be like when we use the different resources according to where it is needed. Then whatever uneven productivity was there before, because of you can say uneven topography or uneven resources allocation, that will be countered, and we'll get a uniform productivity in whole of the field. So this is basically the precision farming. According to the definition, precision farming is a form of farming where site specific management. So every site is first observed with the help of different types of technologies, and then site specific management is basically done. Okay, practices are adopted paying due consideration to the spatial variability. That means in the space, the kind of variability that we have, that is spatial variability of the land, to maximize the crop production and minimize the cost of production. So how is cost of production minimized? Because we are using lesser of inputs now. Unlike in conventional farming, where we go for uniform application, or you can say the blanket application of fertilizers, here we do not do that. So in that way, we are minimizing the use of inputs, and therefore we are minimizing our cost of cultivation with least environmental damage. So here the damage to the environment will also be reduced, because in conventional farming you must have seen that we use the fertilizers in non-uniform way, है ना? So what happens, it sometimes there is toxicity of some of the nutrients at one place, and that leads to environmental damage. So here, since we are not doing those practices, so it will be less harmful for the environment. Next, coming to need of precision farming. Why there is a need of precision farming? First, we have the limited resources. So you must have seen that now there is a news that the third world war will be for water, because water is also like being scarce, you can say input or resource in some of the places. In some of the places it is plentiful, but in other places it is very scarce. So we have the different resources that are in limited amount, and that we have to use sustainably, or you can say judiciously. That's why we need to have this, we need to adopt these precision farming practices. Then we have increasing effectiveness of input. So in precision farming, that we have seen that wherever there is requirement of certain input, only in those places we are putting these inputs. In this way, what happens is these where a certain kind of deficiency is there. So suppose there is a one patch where phosphorus deficiency in plants is seen. So we'll put the phosphorus in that part only. In this way, there will be better utilization of whatever input we have given there. That's why we say that there will be increasing, more effectiveness or efficiency will be increased. Okay? Higher productivity will be there. So production, of course, there won't be uneven production from whole of our field. There will be even production, and that's why that will increase the productivity. Then contribution to the environment is happening. Okay. Now coming to different components of precision farming. So what all components are basically used in precision farming? First we have the GPS system. Okay, GPS and GIS, both of these are used in order to locate a field, or you can say locate the variability in the field. These both of the systems are used. Okay. We have the yield and monitoring mapping. So here we map whole of our field. We monitor it. We not just monitor it for one season, but also we monitor the whole of our land area for many seasons or many years. Okay. We get the history of the land area also. We see that what kind of cropping pattern has been there, what kind of production has been there. So whole of that, you can say, the whole of system is managed in such a way that we collect everything, all the data, and then it is monitored. Grid soil sampling and variable rate fertilizer application. So we take different samples from different part of the field, and in grids we take the parts. So here we have a spatial, you can say that we make a system such that in suppose if we have the 10-hectare area, so we'll decide that in 1-hectare area we'll take one sample, and from another hectare area we'll take one sample. So in this way we take samples from each of the part, and then we analyze it, and then we apply the whatever fertilizer or whatever things that are needed are applied. Okay. Remote sensing. So from the farmer does not need to go to every part of their farm area in order to collect the information. Remote sensing, with the help of remote sensing, with the help of drones, you can see, with the help of different sensors, we can remotely collect all the information and all the data. Okay. Then we have the crop scouting and different. We make the whole of the system. We develop whole of the system in order to monitor, and we develop whole of the crop model from this. Okay. So we analyze that what kind of crops can be grown in this area, and what kind of crops if we grow, what will be the productivity, what will be the production. Whole of it is calculated with the help of technology. So all this is under the precision farming. Then what are the advantages of precision farming? Reduction in cost of cultivation, because lesser of inputs are being used. So in longer terms, although we are using more of cost in using these technologies, but if you see it for longer time, it will reduce the cost of cultivation. Okay. Then increase in input use efficiencies, I've already told you. Then there is reduction in pollution. Okay. So all these reduction in pollution, this all are the advantages of our precision farming. Okay. So this was all about the crops and their related concepts. Thank you for watching.